Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are diving deep into the important concept in Next.js 15 and above, and the client component pattern. If you have ever wondered why some component need to run on the client side instead of the server, or how to properly structure your app using use client, then this video for you. You will understand what client components are, where to use them, and how they fit into the overall application architecture. Especially now that the server component are the default in Next.js. So grab your editor and let's explore how the client component pattern keep the UI dynamic, interactive and fast. So let's understand how the client component placement we matter. So here the thing. Server component are the fantastic for rendering UI on the server, optimizing performance and reducing bundle size. But they can handle state and interactivity that where client component come into play. Now the big question is, where should you place the client component in your component tree? Best practices is that if you place client component lower in your component hierarchy. Why? Because this keep most of your app on the server while pushing only the truly interactive part to the client. This way, you preserve the benefit of server component like faster loads and smaller bundles while still offering full interactivity where needed. Think of things like buttons, model, or input field. All these should live inside a smaller client component embedded within larger server component. So I give you an explore that I have created a separate project for this, and in which we have created some components. So let's move on to the Visual Studio Code. So here you can see I have set up a new project. In this I have created a landing page over here. So I have created a folder inside the app folder with having a landing page, and inside that it have a page.tsx, and in this we have the main page of landing page here. And apart from this, I have also created the three separate component like inside the component folder like navbar.tsx, navsearch.tsx and navlink.tsx. In this, the landing page consists of the navbar, which is the on top of the page hierarchy. After that, navbar, if you go to the navbar, you have two component called here, which is navlinks and navsearch. All the components are only displaying the console log story which I have added in this. Like for the navbar.tsx, we have the navbar rendered, and if you go to the navlinks, you can see the navlinks rendered, and you will see the navsearch dot nav rendered. So before this, let's move on to the let's move on to the slide. So here, how the project structure look like, as I just explained you that in the navbar which is at top, and we have the page content in the main content of the page. So this is the part of the overall page in our project. So in this, if we decode navbar, in navbar we consist of the navlinks. Here you can see that we have two component over here, navlink and the nav search bar, and this is which is it is on the hierarchy, and on top of that we have a navbar. So home, about, service, contact are belong to the navlinks, while the search bar belong to the other component. So here in this you can see I have created a landing component tree where the landing page, which is the index page, inside the landing dot for page folder has the navbar on top. Inside the navbar we have the navlinks, and then we have the nav search bar. So here you can also see that we have the FE. SC denotes each component to be a server component here. So here you can see the landing, from landing page to the navlinks to the navbar, and then to the navlink and nav search bar. All are referred to the server component. So let's move on to the Visual Studio Code. So now you already know that we have created the landing page, and on top of that we have the navbar, and navbar we have, and if you go to the navbar, we have the two links like navlinks and navsearch. In both this we have given a console log statement. So let's run this particular code on the browser and see what we see on the browser. Let's move on to the browser. It's Visual localhost 3000 and wait for the server to start. Server is already running on my system here. So here you can see the opening edge. So now we can go. Now I can also open the control tab over here, so that you can see what are the things which will be rendered while we log in, when we visit to the localhost 3000 plus landing page. So here you can see that the list of navlinks, navsearch input and page heading. So here on the right side, in the control statement, here you can see the navbar rendered on top of that. After that we have the navlinks rendered, and then we have the navsearch rendered, and you also see a tag with the server, which denote that this particular component belong to the server component in this. So this is how the hierarchy of the page display the component like navbar in the first page, then on the nav links on the second, and then these all belong to the server component. Now, as you can see that nav search bar doesn't have any state maintained over here for the input variable for the coming input. So let's add a state for that. So we can add the state not on the nav search bar to track the input which we are getting from the backend or from the front end card. We just do the state or maintain the state within the navbar. So we go to the navbar and we can create a state variable over here. So I can give a constant. I can give a first style and fat first is equal to use state, empty use state, and we can create a and we can close that. I go to the browser. You can see a issue that you are importing a component and need use state. So use state basically used for the client component. So we have to add the use client directly on top of the use navbar. So we can use the use client. Can use client, close, and you can save it. Now go to the browser. We can close. We can reload this. Now if you see, especially that now as we have already made our navbar component, which earlier was a server component, made a translate to a client component. The other two component, which is a nav link rendered nav link and the nav first bar, also show the client component, which they are not showing the server component tag over here. So now as you have seen that when we are adding the state in the nav bar and adding the nav bar state, and we can also convert that server component to a client component. The thing is that if they have top children, like in our case that we in the nav bar, on top of that we have nav links and nav search bar, so they are automatically we converted into a server to a client component, which is not a proper way, because if you are using a some high level server component and if you converted that server component into a client component, then all the nested children of their component will be automatically changing to a client component. So how we can resolve this? So instead of declaring a navbar as a client component, we can declare we can keep that navbar as a client as a server component, and only the nav search bar can be implement that particular state which we are implementing in the navbar can be added in the nav search bar. So that only the leaf only the leaf node become the client component, and neither nor other, as they have no child, so only that particular component will become the client component, not the other nested child, because they doesn't have the child. So let's do this in our example. Let's move on to the Visual Studio. So here we have we can just copy this state, copy and remove that from, and go to the nav search bar. We can paste that here, and also that we can cut the state and use that from here. We can save the nav bar over here. Now we can add it on top of the search bar. Okay, now we can save it completely. Now go to the browser, reload this particular page. Now here you can see now only the nav search rendered act as a client component. Another two, which as earlier, now when we have declared the nav bar as a client component, the nav bar, nav links and nav search all are shown as a client component. So we have just added the state within a nav search component. Only that particular component act as a client component, while other, which is the parent like nav bar in this case, act as a server component and nav link as a server component. So this is how we have to take care of that, how we can implement the client component pattern, or we can implement how the client component on the below as much as below the hierarchy of the project. So this is our so this wrapped up our look into the client component pattern in Next.js. Remember, while server components are great for performance and rendering, like components are essential when you need interactivity, stabilization, or access to browser-specific API like local storage or the DOM. Use client only when it is really needed, and try to keep your client component as low as possible in the component tree to get the best performance. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Drop a comment below if you have any question, or if you want to meet to cover server component next. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one. Thank you.